Good afternoon, all. It is 12 o'clock. That is the time we agreed to start this training. Can somebody just give me an indication if they can hear me and if you can see me in the comments, please? Okay, so I think we've got quite a few participants already. So as I am only starting with my introduction, I think I can go from there. Thank you first, Bart Montessori, for the thumbs up. It's lovely to meet you all this afternoon. I look forward to sharing about myself and sharing about something I'm very passionate about, speech and language development in children. So who am I? I'm Elmien. I have a very unpronounceable surname here in Dubai. So it's Kraamwinkel. So I don't expect anybody to address me in that surname. It's from Dutch origin. I am from South Africa. I've lived my whole life in South Africa. I was born there, went to school there, did my pre-graduate training there, and finished that, I believe, over 25 years ago. And I recently completed my master's degree with special interest in late talkers with young children. I'm really passionate about what I do. I think I love three things in life: cats, coffee, and children. And I have a bit of a soft spot for nice toys. I love a new toy. I think it's because I love working with children so much that I prefer to engage with their kind of toys. I'm also the mother of a 19-year-old who had quite her own journey in terms of learning difficulties and challenges in development. I always say I started off as a speech therapist because I loved children really much. And then I became a parent myself and had quite a journey with my own child. And because of that, I developed a passion for parents. And I really want to accompany them on their journey. And then, of course, all the other professionals like teachers, like yourself, or therapists who work with children, I like to link with them and just share what I know. I quite love learning. Some people might say I love learning too much. So my husband is a mathematician, and I think he inspires me a bit in that sense. My husband and my daughter is in South Africa at the moment while I work here. I really enjoy working in Dubai. I've really liked visiting schools, especially. The nursery schools that I've visited here are quite far ahead of some nursery schools we have in South Africa. So that has been really lovely seeing the way it works here. So I really enjoy that. So that's a little about me. Can I have an indication maybe in the chats, just who you are and where you're based and what your profession is, if you are a teacher or a therapist or a parent? See, some people are typing. I'm just giving an opportunity. It just helps me to know who I'm talking to. Okay, thank you, Bridget, PK teacher in Dubai. Yeah, I believe the schools are opening up again soon. So I believe this is your last little bit of holiday. I'm not sure how it works in Dubai. In South Africa, the teachers usually start a few days before the children. So maybe some of you are already back at work. Lisa, thank you for your comment. I must say a lot of people warned me about the quiet summer in Dubai, but I did not get the quiet summer. I got a bit of the heat, but I was busy, so I did not have the quiet summer people spoke about that we find in Dubai. Okay, thank you for the school nurse in Abu Dhabi. I think it's so important for all professions to be aware of the speech and language development of children and how we can help. Okay. Berna, Oh, inclusion, lovely. Also South African. I have learned not to speak Afrikaans lightly in supermarkets because me and my colleague tend to do that, and then people start responding in Afrikaans. So there are quite a few people understanding Afrikaans and following it. Okay, first part Montessori. All right, so I'm going to continue with my lecture. Please be aware, I tend to talk very fast. So if that happens, please just raise a hand so that I know I need to slow down. Especially when I get passionate, I tend to rush, although I'm a speech therapist, and I can be too loud as well. Also, the other thing is my brain is quite scattered. So I have a pencil and I have a paper. So unlike my very technology based husband and a lot of people in Dubai, I still prefer pen and paper. So if I make a note, I'm not writing any love letters. I'm literally just reminding myself to speak about something that you mentioned or that I still want to mention. Otherwise, I may forget it. Okay, so I'd like to start with a quote. I like this quote. A good education can change anyone, but a good teacher can change everything. I think that all of us here today and anybody, any child can comment about a teacher they remember or somebody that they really made an impression on them. I'm very lucky. I still have contact with my high school teacher who taught me Latin years ago. And I think those are the people who change children's lives. They say that a teacher has the ability to teach all professions because you are the one installing in that child the self-confidence, the help, what they need to become what they can. So I feel very strongly that teachers have such an important role in our system, and especially when we're having children with difficulties who need to be noticed and getting early intervention. So somebody like the school nurse as well, to know what it's like. So to know what a child should be able to do and what a child should not be able to do. Because if you don't know it, how... am I back? I'm back. I left my screen. So sorry about that. Okay. So when you look at communication, and that's my whole viewpoint from this point on, I'm going to talk from a point of communication, speech, and language. Also worth mentioning, we will speak about multilingualism later, but all the things I'm sharing with you in the presentation up to a specific point will be related to English language. So if I say something specific a child should be able to do, this is what we know in English. I will also tell you what to do when you have different languages, especially in Dubai and Abu Dhabi, where we sit with, I think, about 80 to 81% of expats who speak so many different languages. It is important to also look at that. So from a communication point of view, there are three things. So the first one in the orange circle is your physical sensory domain. So that is what a child is saying. So if he is, or how he's saying it. So if he wants to say, I want more, it is the way his lips and everything move for him to get the word out. So from a physical sensory domain, that is literally what you need from your mouth and your breathing to produce a word. The green one, the social emotional domain, is all about why we are saying it. So why do I want to say more? I want to say more because I want more juice. I want to say more because I want my mommy to do something more. So how we use that language and why we would use it. And then cognitive linguistic is the what. That is the language that you need. So for instance, word for that means I want more. So more. So if you look at those three domains, and it's a very technical explanation, but it will put things into perspective for you, it is important to realize that some children will be able to produce a word. They'll be able to say more. But unfortunately, they don't know how to use it. So they will say more when they want less, or they say more when they don't realize they want anything else. So from that, how you produce it, that why you use it, and then you put it in language. Some children are able to say it, but they don't know what it means. They don't have vocabulary. So those are typically your children who don't know what to call the name of an object, how to name an action. So from these three domains, communication happen, and you need all three to be a good communicator. That, of course, happens within an environment, and especially in an environment related to your cultural sense, your physical sense, and your social sense. So within an environment, a child has that internal ability to produce a word, to use the word, and to know the word. And if we see that there's a smaller version of that circle represented, we often see children struggling. So a child with autism, for instance, may be able to say the word. They can often recite a very long sentence. They will be able to say to you, Peppa Pig wants to go. But they have no idea what it means. They don't know why they're using it. They don't know how to use it. They also don't have the language. Other children have the ability to speak, but because of a language barrier or a predisposition to not learning languages, they don't know which words they should be using. So often we see word finding difficulties. So it's very important to look at those three circles and determine, is there something off about the balance in this circle? Because if there is, this child maybe need to be seen by a speech therapist. But that's just what the framework within I'm working for. From now on, the things will be easier and it will be quite clear. But I just wanted to explain that to you from a starting point. So talking about these three things, so the cognitive linguistic, the physical sensory, and the social emotional. This is a video that I want us to quickly watch. It's a very short video. I think I'm going to play it twice. This is a little girl who has a developmental delay. She was nonverbal up till a few months ago. Within this session, I was able to get her to use her cognitive linguistic, her physical sensory, and her social emotional domains for communication. And this shows you that you don't necessarily need a lot of words, but you need to know what to produce, how to produce it, and when to use it. So I'm going to show you the video of Alan, and then I will explain to you exactly what I mean with that. Now I just need to find the spot to play. Can you see the video? So I see that somebody saw the video. So what this video is essentially about, it was a moment in therapy, a magical moment that inspires you for weeks to come, about a little girl who wanted to play with the crocodile. So she was interested in the crocodile. So she wanted the crocodile's mouth to open. So from a social emotional domain, she wanted the action to be repeated. She's not using words yet. She's only using which is an intentional vocalization. That is her word for open. So that is the language that she's using. And from a physical sensory domain, she's actually producing repetitively to get the crocodile's mouth to open. So as you can see, for her, all three of those domains played a role in creating this moment. And that is when you will see that, oh, we're going somewhere with therapy. And I think we tend to think of communication as a lot of words, a lot of language. But children can communicate without a lot of words if they know how to use it, where to use it, and why to use it. And I always say, when you get a moment like this in therapy, you're almost able to go on for months again without getting that same reward, because it's just so amazing to see a child realize that I have the ability to make, intentionally change my environment by doing something. So, and as you can hear, the Afrikaans people on the chat, my Afrikaans pulled through at the end because I was so very, very excited about this. So yes, I'm just going to play the video again, and then you can just think about what I said, and then we'll move on. So yeah, that was Ella. And from here, we're just going to move on to communication milestones and what you specifically should be looking for. So the one thing I want to talk about, we speak about red flags, milestones. Those vocabulary are used intermittently for different things. But it's important to realize that it's not only about milestones. Milestones have some value for us, but it is not um, always the do all and end all, because in the end, it is just a skill that 75 to 9% of children has achieved at that specific time. So we like to use milestones, but it is important to realize that it's actually just to start conversations between parents and professionals. Often children will have some components of a milestone and not others, and that's why it's so important to consider talking to other professionals, discussing it, because if it was that clear cut and easy, we would definitely know which children to see all the time and which children not to see. But and sometimes it's just not clear. So it's important to know this is the milestones, and I'm going to discuss it with you. I'm going to discuss it 0 to 3 months, 3 to 6. I'm going to go up to the age of 5 years. Well, we're discussing the milestones that we can expect at what ages. But it's more important to realize that this is just an indication. If a child is late on milestones or achieving milestones for that matter, it does not necessarily that they're a good communicator or they don't need therapy. I don't think a big enough discussion is being had about the fact that milestones are actually not universal. Milestones were detected in groups of children, which were not necessarily representative of culture. So in South Africa, there are certain things that are expected of a child or not expected of a child at a certain age. And I can go ahead and say, oh dear, this child is not hitting this milestone. But is he not hitting the milestone because age appropriately is not developing? Or is it something that in his culture that is not important? Because then I can't expect it. And I think it's such an important thing to remember here in Dubai, where we work with so many different cultures and languages and so many different facets of children's lives. So to always remember, it's not universal. We have a good idea of what we should expect, but it's not the do all and end all. Also, they say that milestones are not that objective because we all have a bias when we look at things. It's you want to see it, and if you want to see it, sometimes you see it. We get it often with the opposite way, that parents will not be aware of a thing a child is doing. So it's important to note it's just an indication. It is not predictive. Masters cannot predict for us where this child will land up. It can say to us that at the moment he's not meeting his milestones, he's not meeting age-appropriate development, but it cannot predict the long-term outcome of a child. Of course, there are many studies and many factors that we know can be predictive, that can help children or keep them behind. But milestones in its such is not as predictive as people would like it to be. We like to say, oh, he's not crawling, so he won't be doing good in the gross motor. We cannot say that because we do not look at children as if they are little robots. Each child is different and each child has his own way of developing and making progress. Masters is only meant as a screener. It is not meant to be specific to children, specific disabilities, specific determinations, the specific things. It is literally meant to specify what the child's wrong with, what you think is wrong, but it's not sensitive as an assessment tool. And the most important thing, and I'll be talking about this a lot, is it's not prescriptive. It is descriptive. So this is what you will use to describe what you see in a child. So the description is the most important word. And if that's the only thing you remember with milestones, is it's a description of what children are doing, then I would be happy and walk away here that I've taught you something, because I do think that we tend to be rigid and we forget that children are not exactly the same replicas of one another. Everybody has their own thing, their own little quirks, their own skills, strong points, limitations, and we need to keep that in mind. So we cannot remove milestones from cultural context. And we have to use it responsibly. Sorry, that's the word I was looking for. So you can reference it as a source. You can say, according to milestones, this is what the child should be doing. You can interpret it in the context. In our school system or in our clinic, this is what the child is doing. And we must always avoid isolating information because there are so many milestones. If we isolate one aspect of a child's development, we're not seeing the whole child. And in the end, this is who we're treating, or this is who we're teaching, or this is who we're working with. So we cannot think of it as just an isolated thing that this child is not doing, that there's so many more aspects to it. Okay, so now comes all the discussions about every stage. So with this in mind, remember that these milestones are generally just descriptive. It's an indicator, but it does not necessarily mean there's something very wrong with the child or there's something going to be very wrong if this is absent. What it means is that we need to look at it and pay attention and see what we can do to get this child to optimize his development. So with your baby stages, 0 to 3 months, just specifically, I am talking about communication, language, speech. So I did not include any motor milestones. This is, of course, an important aspect of it, but because I'm a speech language therapist, I am literally talking about the speech and language. So if you have any questions, you can pop it into the chats. Let me check my chats before I go on if there's anything new. Yeah, no, there's nothing. So, yeah, so when we look at a baby stages 0 to 3 months, babies are very interactive. They cry, they smile, and they coo. At this stage, they will respond to faces, they will look at faces. They're very much into their caretakers' faces. They will quiet when picked up. They will listen to voices, and the sounds that they're making are vowels and crying. So they make like, oh, that kind of thing. So as early as this, we can already sometimes see changes in babies who are different. Parents will often tell us, I remember he was not like his sibling, or I remember he was not like a friend of mine's baby. So there is already an awareness that something might be wrong with some children. Sometimes it just don't start that easy. It's not that easy to pick up. You can only pick it up as they go on and they grow up and they grow older, and we can see the signs. But it's very important to regard a parent's description of what their children can do. Research has found that children's behavior are best described by their parents. The interpretation is not always right, but the description is accurate. So often when we go back, we will see, oh, but this mother reported to the pediatrician at the first visit that she's worried because the baby is not responding as well to noises as it should. Or he was not interactive. He wasn't looking at faces from a young age. So even as early as this, we can see changes in development, 0 to 3 months. So the baby is still very fragile and very much dependent on the caretaker, but we sometimes see differences at this age already. So from 3 to 6 months is a lovely age where they start smiling and laughing. They will cry when they're upset and they will seek comfort. So they want a mommy or a daddy or a nanny or a teacher as aid to give that nurturing and that support. We start seeing the motor development come into play. They will show excitement by waving arms and legs, and they like to be near special persons. So even at such a young age, they already have a preference for some people, their caretakers often, but they will prefer to be people that they know, the grandma, grandpa. And I think that's something that our children in this modern era misses out on a lot because families are scattered over the world. And as much as the world is small because of technology, it's also very big because families are far apart and we depend on screen time devices to sometimes communicate. And with a little babaki like this, it's not always possible for the baby to interact or for anybody to get to know them. So They can be comforted most of the time. So this is the age where if they're upset and they feel overwhelmed or they're hungry and you try to soothe them, they will respond to it. The speech they start using now, they start using not only the ah and the oh, they will also start using different vowels like e, ah, that open mouth posture that goes out, open and close, and you'll hear that wow, wow, wow. I think we've all heard that wow, 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 that very upset sound because they're starting to use semi-articulated sounds. So this helps us to read the baby and to understand. Um, of course, if this is not happening, it's not necessarily an indication that something is wrong, but we want to start seeing it. And if we don't see it, we want to ask why. So I didn't mention this in the beginning, but hearing tests are a test battery that are performed on young children from a very young age. Uh, so most South African hospitals require a screening of hearing before the baby is discharged. In Dubai, it depends on which hospital you are at, but making sure that a baby can hear is so important. We can already fit a baby with a hearing aid at 3 months of age. If we pick up that hearing loss with a screening test, which is painless and not at all uncomfortable, they can be sent for a diagnostic test. When the diagnostic test is done, we can map the hearing loss that they have, and we can actually talk about what amplification are we going to give. So I do find that there is a lot of unknown in terms of hearing loss, that people don't realize what the use of a hearing aid is, what it's used for, how effective it can be. A colleague of mine described it very well the other day. She said a hearing aid is not like glasses. You don't put your glasses on and then you see. A hearing aid needs to be worn by children all the time because they need to learn to listen to sound. This is a process. Why do babies only start talking at 9 months of age? Because for 9 months, they heard themselves and they were experimenting. So even babies with hearing loss will start babbling. But what we see is it stops because they don't hear themselves and they cannot hear it. So they stop doing it. Why would you do something if you can't hear it? So it is something that I really want to stress, and I'll say it now because I don't want to forget later, that if a child has been diagnosed with a hearing loss, it is extremely important to use the hearing aids in class to make sure you know what this child can hear and how he can use this. Also, these days with technology, so many systems available that we can also augment the sounds in the hearing aid. But hearing aids in a child with a hearing loss is not a negotiable. It is something that you as a teacher, as a school nurse, as a therapist should insist on, because otherwise that child cannot hear it. What we know is that hearing loss is often over a wide frequency. So children will sometimes respond to sound. I've had parents who tell me, my child can hear. And we've been upset with me when I insist on sending a 2-year-old child for a hearing test. And then that child couldn't hear because he could hear a frequency. He responds to light, he responds to dark, he responds to movement in the environment. And then people assume they can hear. So this is something that I just would like to mention, that it is really crucial that a child with a hearing loss get the opportunity to wear hearing aids and get the opportunity to learn to listen, to be able to develop speech and language. So yeah, that was 3 to 6 months. I wanted to ask, is there any specific questions about hearing loss that I can answer for anybody while we're on the topic, because I may not have time at the end to go back to it. So if there's anything that I can answer about hearing loss and hearing aid use, please pop it into the chats. I will check the chat now and just make sure there's not any questions. I think it's difficult to understand that a child who do not hear proper sounds will not hear speech, because speech is across a variety of consonants and sounds. So yeah, very important to do that. And hearing aid fitment is also a process. These days, there's online services where you can have a hearing aid tested. It's important to take someone to a professional and have them fitted with the right hearing aids. It doesn't look to me as if there's anything that anybody would like to ask about hearing aids, so I'm going to continue with the next slide. Baby stages, 6 to 9 months. this is where baby starts to play games like peekaboo. They love it when we sing a song and bounce them on the lap and respond. They are becoming little social creatures. They do become upset when separated from parents. We always say that stranger danger is a real thing, and it's necessary. So if a child does not have any fear of strangers, it is not good. We want children to be aware that, oh, I'm now with a favorite person. As we saw in the previous slide, I think children were already at 3 to 6 months, wanted to be near a special person. So if a child does not realize he's moving hands, he's changing to people, this is a problem and we need to look at it. Because why is he not aware? Is he, in a sensory aspect, not registering what's going on? Is it really hard for him to cope and he's shutting down? So to be aware that they will be upset and to also explain that to parents and say, but this is good. This tells me that your baby is developing typically because this is what you should be doing. And they will respond to their own name. This goes back to hearing loss. Often children on the spectrum struggles to respond to their name. So you'll get the parent at the age of 2 will say to you, my child is not showing a response to his own name. And that's something to note because children should be aware at already 6 to 9 months that I am Hamid or I am Ibrahim or I am Hind. Because if they're not aware of that, it means for some reason they're not either not hearing it, they're not attending to it, or they just don't feel the need. And it's really important to look out for this. They enjoy routines. So any routine that you do with them, bath time, nap time, story time at school, they start liking routine. They do well with predictable circumstances. Some children need more than others, but most children do well with routines. They are unsure of strangers. So when they will come to school at this age for the first time, they will be insecure. They will want to check out who this person is. They might cry when mommy and daddy leave. But as they grow up, they grow used to the new caretakers and the teacher, they will settle usually. There's a lot of research going on about the early start of school and how that has changed children's emotional social development. That when children start school earlier, they get used to strangers sooner. Some children do very well with it, some children don't. I don't think there's a recipe for children. I always say that children will humble you. As a parent, as a teacher, as a therapist, they have the ability to tell you that you are not as smart as you think you are. So it is important. They will self-soothe with a favorite object, maybe a thumb, a pacifier. On the thumb sucking, this is something my own daughter did. So I read up a lot about it and I researched it because everybody is looking with me like eyes like this, that I'm a speech therapist and my daughter is sucking her thumb. So what am I going to do about it? And thumb sucking was for me a very cool indicator of when my daughter was overwhelmed, when she needed reassurance, when she needed me around, when she needed something, when she was hungry or thirsty. So instead of always proclaiming, oh, a child shouldn't suck thumb, the child shouldn't use a pacifier, it is important to note that this is a way the child is used to soothing. Yes, we don't want prolonged use of a pacifier or thumb sucking because that may cause orthodontical difficulties and teeth placement problems. But at this age, it's still normal to do that. And we want to encourage them to have a way of expressing their needs. It's also been said that a lot of orthodontic children would have sit with problems anyway, but the thumb or the pacifier just made it worse. So yes, be aware that this is something that a child may need, and it's not that it's okay. We want to decrease the use of it over time so that by the age of 3, we don't still sit with this child sucking his thumb or sucking on the pacifier. But at this age, it's something that we can give during that time. I know at schools it is quite hard sometimes to control that. But yeah, have an open mindedness about a young child sucking a thumb or sucking a dummy, a pacifier, because it is something that children still do. In terms of sounds, you're getting the babbling now. Ba, 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 ma, 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 ba, ba. You're getting that wide open jaw. So it's literally, it's jaw driven. That whole little face is moving when they make these sounds. So they use the b, the p, the m, and the t, and they will use the vowels r, e, and o. So they will go ba, 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 ma, ma, ma. It's often a time when people would think children are saying first words because they will going ma, 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 ma. So it's all in the eye of the beholder. Some mommies prefer to believe they call mama. Um, Often it's just them practicing because, like with anything, when we jog, when we run a race, we need to practice that motor movement to get it going. And with speech is the same. Babbling is what children use to practice to compile words. So when a child has not babbled, um, it may be an indication of an underlying speech production issue, a hearing loss as well. So we need to be aware that children need that babbling to practice to get to talking, because by doing that, ba, 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 they realize that, oh, I can just do ba, ba. And then they start realizing, but if I do ba, ba, my baby brother comes running. So it's a way of learning new words, developing, and being able to realize how I'm going to use speech for productive words. So, yes, that's on babbling. Baby stages 9 to 12 months. This is the time when they imitate you. So if you pull away the blanket to say boo, they will do it again. They will start copying words. So when we look at imitation, we don't only look at imitation in play. So we don't only look at them shaking the rattle like you do, or trying to build a block or stack a tower. We also want to see, are they trying to mimic us when we say, mommy, where's mama? Where's dada? So those are things that we are looking out for to make sure that those speech skills are coming along. We often see children at the age of 2 when they're not when they won't copy. It's really hard for them to learn words because we learn by copying. We say a word, we hear mommy uses it, we use it, and it starts creating that pathways in the brain needed to develop language. They can show emotions, so they can be happy, they can be mad, they can be sad. Not yet at the 2-year-old stage where they're really getting that frustrations out, but they can show those emotions, usually with facial expressions, with their body posture. That's a way that we see that they actually, yes, how they feel about things. And we need to pay attention to it. It's so important to connect with your child on an emotional level because they want to know that they'll be heard, and to acknowledge that as a teacher, as a practitioner, to say, oh, are you sad? Do you not want to let go of the toy now? So that they also know that they noticed. It makes such an important part of who they're becoming as emotional, in terms of the emotional development. So build a very special relationship with parents and involve caregivers, so that we can include the staff at school who they are exposed to a lot. So we'll know this is my teacher, this is my nanny, this is my mommy. And it's important for them that you respond to them. That response is really crucial when they have this special relationship with us, because in the end, they will measure themselves by your response. If nobody ever responds to a child's emotions or what he's doing, you will sometimes lose interest. It depends on the personality of the child. Some children are more internally motivated than others, but our introverted children and highly sensitive children will just stop sharing their emotions, and we don't want that. We want children to share emotions, their feelings, be excited, be sad, be mad. I often wonder, we will say, oh, the child's having a bad day. I always sometimes have a bad day. It's not necessarily because I didn't have my coffee that I don't feel well. I'm just having a bad day. And babies are allowed to also have bad days and just have a day where I'm not feeling up to going to the supermarket or doing a creative art activity today, or participating. Children have the right to do that. They are very curious. So when you will hide a toy, they will look for it. They will be curious about accessories that we wear. They love glasses. Little babies love to grab my glasses. I've learned to say to the children, my hair grows back, but my glasses don't, in a attempt to stop them from grabbing my glasses. It's not been very effective. So if anybody has any clues on how I can prevent them from being curious about my glasses, I would love that. They trust at this stage that their needs will be met. So they trust that when they cry, you will respond. They trust that when they reach out, you will pick them up. So that trust is there, and that's why the special relationship with caregivers are so important, because they need to build trust that they're going to use for the rest of their lives. So if we do not respond to that, that trust is broken, and the attachment is severed, and you don't have that emotional skills building up. So claps and waves, they will clap, they will wave on demand, not on demand. Sometimes children do not want to do something, and it's okay. I think we've grown up in a society where certain rules are so rigid that we forget that in the end, this is just a baby still 9 months old and struggling to regulate himself. And now there's new people, and he has to wave and he has to clap for them. I know I do it as well. When a child does something in therapy, I run out, say to the mom, come see, and I say to the child, say Baba. Then the child looks at me like, why would I want to do that? So it's important to also take into account that children have their own will. Now they start using vowel combinations and disyllabic words. So instead of like papa, which is monosyllabic words, or mama, they will start doing mapa, pama, data, dida. So they start practicing all those skills that they've been building towards getting first words. So we will often also see with children with a speech production problem that there's a lack of variety in the sound. So they only stick to the p, the m, and the b, which we saw was at 6 to 9 months of age. So if they get stuck on that p, b, m, t, we need to start wondering, why is this child getting stuck? Because he should be able to develop more sounds. Obviously, if there's an underlying problem, there would be some difficulty with this, and we need to be aware of it to be able to help and to assist and get speech therapy from a young age. We will talk about early intervention and when to refer, but I think the biggest misconception that there is, and I think it's worldwide, internationally, because when I read research from other countries, it says the same. So often parents have reported to a teacher, to a pediatrician, to somebody that they're worried about the child's speech, and they're being dismissed, saying, oh, it's not that long, it's a boy. Boys always talk later. The reality is boys talk later than girls, but within the normal limits. So if a boy is 18 months and he's still not using first words, it's a good reason to get him into speech therapy, because he should be starting to say it. We so easily dismiss parents and do not listen to what they say. And I include myself in this. We recently had somebody here who the parents were very concerned about the development. And they were describing all these things, and the little baby started off with therapy, and literally within that first 2 weeks, he got a diagnosis. But if it wasn't for the parents saying something is wrong and describing the behavior to us or to another professional, this child would have gone another maybe 12 to 14 months without intervention, and we can now shape this child's future by starting on time. So it's really good to listen to what a parent is saying to you and giving them the advice. If somebody consults me and say, oh, I'm not feeling well today, my child has a fever, is it my place to tell that mother, oh, it's nothing to worry about? Or is it my place to say to the mother, well, if he runs a fever, maybe we must see a medical professional about this? And the same goes for OT, speech therapy, physiotherapy. The parent has the right to bring their child to a specialist who can look at the child and judge by themselves, because this is what we do. Also to see that in your class, this little one is not doing as well as the other ones. Why is this? To start noticing, is everything okay? Are there some things that's lacking? Early intervention is really key, and it can be done. I've seen babies as young as 9 months for therapy, and it's made a difference. My best example of this is a little girl who was born prematurely. She's now 12. So she was born prematurely 12 years ago at 26 weeks, which now of 25 weeks, which at this stage people don't feel is that early anymore. But 12 years ago, 25 weeks were really, really extreme. The medical intervention were not at the same point as it was now. So it was a really hard struggle for that little girl. So I started with her in therapy initially once a month, following her up because she obviously spent months in neonatal ICU. By the time she was 2, she was coming to me every second week, every week. And I stopped seeing her at the age of 6. Also, she was very lucky. Her medical intervention went very well. But she's now 12 years old, attending a typical developing school without her aid. She's able to learn. And the thing that pulled that little girl through is the fact that her parents came out of neonatal ICU, not saying, thank goodness this is over, saying this is just the beginning where we start. And from here on, we see what we can do to help her to the best of her ability. Yes, she has learning difficulties. Yes, attention is a problem. But because she had the necessary early intervention, this has made all the difference in this little girl's life. Okay, 12 to 18 months, the first birthday, the first words. And so by now, the child will say long strings of sounds, syllables, and first words. Most common words used by children at this age, it's across languages, apparently. Mama, papa, I think like in Arabic, it will be baba. No, they're very aware of no. Ball, bye, hi. And in English, banana is also one of the first words, which for me is a very difficult word, but I can attest that in South Africa, there's a different word for banana in Afrikaans, and all children talk about a nana. So apparently it is a thing going. Banana is a word that is one of the first words. So they will be able to string along many words like bada, gada, gada, go. They're talking long strings. It's that literally you're looking at the baby and you think she's talking to me, but what is she saying? But like I said, she will be deliberately using words to get things. If she wants the ball, she will ask for ball. She will call mama or dada. Unfortunately, mama is called at night. I think dadas are called during the day. So yes, so in this at this age, we see a rapid development of words. So between 12 and 18 months are actually 2 different stages, because they will be able to do many words, copy many words, ask for many things. They literally pick up words as they go. So it has been said that children whose parents talk to them, or there's a lot of talking to them specifically, language develops quicker. The reason for that is they say if you talk about what you're doing, a child will hear up to 1,000 words per hour. In my experience, some children don't learn as easily. So our typically developing little ones will pick up those words and start using them. It's also the case where you would say something and you were not talking to them, but oh my goodness, if you say ball to his brother or his sister, you will be like, oh, my teacher spoke about the ball to my friend. Where's my ball? So they are very aware and they understand a lot more than what they're saying. They look around for where questions. So if you ask, where's teacher? Where's Nana? Where's the ball? They will start looking for it. And try to detect the person that they're looking for or the object. So they like doing that. They will follow directions. And take into account, once again, personality plays a big role here. We have children who will give the ball every time. We have children that just because you say give the ball doesn't mean he's going to give the ball. So take into consideration those specific elements of a child's personality. Sometimes you can literally see on their face, I do know what you mean, but I'm not sharing now. So just use that as an indication as well. They will point to things to request. So they will request, I want a ball. I want my mommy. I want my daddy. This is what they do. And they'll also point to things when they can't use the word. They will comment. With commenting, I mean that they will say something about what you're doing. So if we are playing with the blocks and we're going up, 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 without me saying up, they will point to up, or they will try to say up. So commenting is a very common thing. We all comment. We don't only ask questions for when we need things. We comment about what we're doing. So With children with communication difficulties, you'll sometimes see the commenting is little, or they have specific words that they're using. They will use number names or colors, even at such a young age, instead of just commenting on another concept that's happening. And they will point to get information. If they want, if mommy went out the door or the teacher went out the door, they will point to the door like, what happened? Where did she go? And when is she coming back? They will shake their head for no and not for yes. So if you ask a question, do you want to go? They will say no, or they'll shake their head. The important thing to realize is we often ask questions without expecting the answer. We will say, do you want your food now? And then the child will shake his head and will give the food. So if you're not prepared to take the answer, don't ask the question. Rather say, we're going to have food now. Make a comment and don't request. So they will understand and use words for common objects. So anything they're used to having, they will name. They'll have a name sometimes for their pacifier, for their favorite self-soothing item like a teddy bear. They will start using some actions as well, and they'll identify at least one body part. So they'll be able to say, oh, this is my nose, this is my hands. But only one at this age. So they will show to it when you ask them, can you show me? They will show it to you. So that's up to 18 months. And I'm going to do 12 to 18 months after this. And we're busy with 12 to 8 months. Sorry. We're going to do 18 to 24 months. And then we're just going to take a 2-minute coffee break so everybody can just stretch their legs, grab something to drink, have a bathroom break, and then we'll continue after 2 minutes. But I'm just warning you ahead of time. So with the baby stages, 18 to 14 months, they use at least 50 different words. People will ask me, when do I know a child is a late talker? The formal definition for a late talker is a 2-year-old not yet using 50 words and not adding 2 words together. So at 2, I expect them to actually have many more than 50, but 50 is the minimum. To say, more mommy, come daddy, bye nanny. They need to have that kind of thing. If they don't have it, we are worried. Between 18 and 24 months, this should start developing, and it's going at a rapid rate. It's not going like 1 word a month. It's like rapidly increasing. A lot of it is getting more. So it's important to keep an eye on this marker. So if a child at 2 is not doing that, it's not a question of if they need speech therapy. It's they need communication intervention because they should be doing this. Included in words, we also include gestures. So a lot of cultures or countries are advocates for gestures. So a gesture will count as a word. So if they're using more, I count that as a word. But if they're not using any verbally spoken words, we need to be concerned. This is a big red flag. They understand many more. This is the point where you can say, go to the door, come to the car, give to daddy, give to mommy. They can understand short sentences. Their speech is not always clear. So this is not uncommon. Children will sometimes omit final sounds from words. So they'll say, instead of bag, they'll say bag. If he's using bag consistently to get a bag, it is counted as a word. If they use an animal sound like moo, it counts as a word. If they do it every time I see a cow, I count it as a word. So that counts as part of 50 words. But it's not always easy for everybody to follow them. Usually the teachers, the aides at school, the mommy, the daddy, those are the people that really understand most of what they're saying, because it's unclear. They leave out the final sounds. They will make a simple sound if there's 2 consonants together. So instead of saying stuck, they will do ta. So they leave out the final sound. They also leave out the S in the beginning. With longer words like elephant, they'll do fent. Or banana, nana. So if you don't know a child well and he's only been in your class for a short while and you don't understand him at this stage, I would not necessarily rush to any conclusions. But make sure they have the vocabulary, they have the language to use it. They will follow 2-step instructions. So if you say, go to your bag, they will understand they can go and they must go to the bag. Or come to the door. They'll do come and they know they have to come to the door, which is quite early. We tend to think that they only do this later, but it's already at the age of 2. They are able to go and do things. Grammatical markers refers to language structures that children are using. So at this age, they'll use me, I, and you, and mine. Oh my goodness, they all know mine. And once they know mine, everything is mine. And they'll even start using possessives. This is now in English, like daddy's car, mommy's shoes, mine. Most of the time, it's mine. Whatever toy they have, it's mine. They will definitely tell you that this is not yours to share with anybody or for you to share. So there's a lot of things coming into play, and we can expect them to do, like at the age of 2, start using 2-word phrases. So that's a wrap for up to 2 years. Following this, we are going to do 2 years to 5 years. I'm going to talk a little bit about intervention, when to refer, why to refer, how to refer, and have that conversation with the parent. And then we will also talk about multilingualism, which I feel is such an important issue that needs more attention and is not always getting the highlights that it needs. So it's now 12:56. I'm going to continue on my clock in 4 minutes time at 1 o'clock. Then we can resume and continue with the rest. If there's any comments at this stage, please post it in the chat box, and then I can handle that before we start for the second half of the session. Thank you. Okay, I'm back. Yes, I didn't see any comments in the chat. If anybody can just send me a thumbs up. Is the speed that I'm going at good, or do you feel I must go slower or faster? If it's good, send a thumbs up. If I must go slower, thumbs down. Thank you. Okay, let's continue. I know it's a lot of information, and remembering all these things are sometimes hard, but if you think of that first image that I shared about the language, how the child says it and when to use it, if you take those things into account, you can often pick up if a child is having some difficulties, and that will give you better guidance and looking for something specific that's off. Okay, toddler stages. So the 2-year-olds are those little busybodies that really know what they want and how to do it. So they will use word combinations at this stage. They will say their name when asked. I also feel that's dependent on their speech and the name. Some names are really hard. It's harder to say some names. So they will have at least they'll have a name that they call themselves, which they will be using. Grammatical markers are now picking up. So they will use plurals like, I want balls, I want the boys, the babies. So they are aware of more than one. Sometimes they're not using it yet, but they know the difference. And they will start using the in continuous tenses, like I'm walking, I'm running. This is a very, grammatical markers are a language dependent skill. So it differs from one language to another. So myself, I'm very skilled in judging Afrikaans language and in judging English language because I grew up bilingually. And in South Africa, that's something we do. But for instance, Arabic speaking is much different. Urdu is much different. So I will often consult with my other colleagues who's Urdu speaking or Arabic speaking, saying, okay, what does the grammar look like in this child? And I'm going to speak about language delays and when we are concerned about two languages, but it's important to note that this is language-based. So for each language, there are certain grammatical markers. I'm only discussing English, as most of our schools here, I think most of you attending are doing English, but there is a specific grammatical marker for every language. That's some skills that you expect children to have. In Afrikaans, we don't have a continuous tense. So a child's not going to use this at 2 to 3 years because it's not something we use. They will also start using the past tense. So he walked, he talked, they went. They're not using irregulars yet, so they will say goed, he goed. They won't say he went. They have some reasoning for things and events. I think that's the problem sometimes with the 2-year-old. They have the reasoning why they think it should be so. It's not necessarily the thing you want them to do. They know exactly why they don't want to put on their shoes. Your reasoning for wanting to put on the shoes because it will be hot outside are not their business and they don't care about it. They will ask who, what, and where questions. So they will ask, who's that? Where's daddy? What's mommy? What's mommy doing? So they start also using longer sentences, between 3 to 5 words. Sometimes grammatically correct, depending on the grammatical markers, sometimes really struggling with it. They will correctly produce the p, b, m, w, d, n in most words and most vowels. So usually our difficult sounds is this, the k. In Arabic, there's a few back sounds. Urdu also has a few sounds, but those are the more difficult ones that comes after 3 years of age, which we're not concerned about. Also, what I mentioned before, they will omit final sounds from words. They won't say this in the beginning of school. They'll say cool because they don't have that ability yet in speech production. The k often becomes a t before 3 years of age. So it's not a cat, it's a tat. It's not a car, it's a tar. The same goes for the back sounds become frontal. The back sounds become frontal, the front sounds become back. So instead of saying bat, they'll say back. So that's something that happens up to 3 years of age, in which we usually do not pay much attention to in therapy until that stage. Although when you are a trained speech therapist, and especially when you do prompt training, which I explained that circles in the beginning, we look at the vowel production as well to see, but are there some vowels missing? Because we get front vowels and we get back vowels. So if we don't have the front vowels, we're already concerned and we'll start working on speech production. Although it's quite hard for children under 3 years because it's a bit rigid. I'm a very much play-based intervention therapist. I believe work according to the child, and at the age of 2.5, to expect a child to practice sounds are hard for them. It's not nice. So we work through play and more intervention on play-based basis. Most therapists will tell you, and teachers, I think, understand that better, that it looks like play. Therapy looks like play. It should be like play because that's what our children learn. And that's why in school, we have lovely areas. And I see here, especially in Dubai, I haven't had the privilege of going to Abu Dhabi, but the schools are really well maintained. There are spaces for play. There's outside play. So it's so lovely to give the child that opportunity to play and to learn. Their speech is intelligible 50% of the time to unfamiliar people. So this is the point where if you can't follow 50% of what the child is saying, you need to start thinking, maybe this may be a candidate for speech therapy. So I, as a speech therapist, will come into your schoolroom class as a class visitor. And when the child talks to me, I would be able to understand 50% of what they're saying. Take into account that for me as a speech therapist, I'm trained at listening to it. And I've often had parents who say to me, oh, my child's not using words. And then when you start listening and you point it out, you can spot the patterns. So, but at this age, we need to be aware that they should be more intelligible. And if they're not, we must start asking, why is this and what is going wrong? So that's 2 to 3 years. 3 to 4 years uses longer sentences of 3 to 5 words. They'll ask a variety of questions and they use their question words correctly as well. And they can follow multi-step directions like go to the cupboard, get your bag. And they should be able to do it. If they're struggling with this, we need to look into why are they not doing it. Is it that they're not listening? Is it the language is a problem? So yeah, that's something to consider. They understand a simple story. Oh, I made a grammar error. My apologies. And simple story. So they need to be able to follow a story. They need to be able to enjoy it. And when mommy tells a story, and they themselves should be able to retell a simple story. Grammatical markers that develop during this time, plurals. So it will be easy for them. The pronouns that's continuing to develop is I, me, we, and they. Articles, like in English, we use a and the, and prepositions on and under. I find that prepositions are really hard for children who learn a different language. It's harder for them to learn. But on and under, they should understand. Those are the first ones to develop. There's also a belief that when a child is efficient in handling prepositions in a language, they're actually well spoken. So because it's one of the hardest things to use, because prepositions are so abstract. If you say, I'm hitting with the bat, there's not a word we can show for with. On and under we can show. But prepositions are really hard for them. And their speech is intelligible for familiar and unfamiliar partners. So at this stage, if I visit your class and I start talking to a child, I need to be able to understand him. If I don't understand him, we need to look into this. This is also the age where often children are sent to us around 3 because now they are frustrated. They start biting friends, they start hitting the boy or girl next to them, they push because they're frustrated. They cannot express their needs, so they want to express it. And the only way to do it sometimes is through a physical gesture. So that's why for me it's so important to start seeing them early, because by the time they get frustrated, we often need more than one professional to intervene. We will need the speech therapist and like a play therapist. We'll need the speech therapist and the occupational therapist, where if you can get this child at 2.5, and you have 6 months to work before that extreme frustration kicks in, And then you press for time. And as you know, what I've told you now is that language takes about 2 years to develop into small sentences. If a child has only single words at the age of 3, he is just unable to express. And it will be very frustrating for parents as well, because now we cannot just quick fix it. It's not that easy. We need to build that principles and building blocks before we can just assume they're going to use the language. So yes, that's something that parents should also consider. I think parents understand their children very easily, and I've often been told, but I know what he wants. Yes, you know what he wants, but does anybody else know what he wants? Because now he's at school, he's interacting with different people, and he needs to be able to express what he needs. So you as a teacher and you as a parent need to be able to follow your child's speech. 4 to 5 years, they use longer and more complex sentences that are grammatically correct. So at this stage, they will not say something like, he goes to the store. They will say, he went to the store. And they will not use the wrong form of the word, say, instance, past tense instead of present tense. They know exactly how to use it, and they need to be able to express it, because now we're getting to the point where they'll be needing academic language. So conversational language refers to what we're talking about. So when I'm talking to you, this is what they're using. But academic language builds on conversation language. So if you didn't build up your conversation language, academic language will be hard for you. Learning what a triangle is, learning what it is to have a corner, concepts are just not easy for them to understand. So we need that conversation language sorted before we can build the academic language. We say now at 4 to 5 really need to learn letters, numbers, learn reading and writing. This comes first, this comes last. And they produce most consonants correctly. So we will see some sounds in South Africa, and I think here as well in some languages, the r is a very difficult sound for children to produce. So they only get that done by around 6. But by this age, in most languages, most sounds are established. If you cannot hear the sounds correctly, or they're consistently producing it incorrectly, it's a time to look into speech therapy. Just as a side note, I think as a speech therapist, the least work I do is in the field of teaching children to say sounds. Speech therapy is a very broad area. We do a lot of language listening, speech production, not necessarily from one speech sound, but producing sentences. So it is really little of the scope of practice. And I think little is known that this is not all we do. I think the most common thing I heard when studying in university is, will you teach me how to talk? And that's not actually all we do. We do so much more than just this. But if a child's not saying a sound correctly at this age, it is time to see a speech therapist and intervene. So that was neurodevelopment. Quickly, with a lot of information, between 0 to 5 years. I did not go into all the fine details, but if you know these things, you should be able to diagnose to identify a child with difficulties. So now the question moves to why we're going to early intervention. So early childhood intervention is the early years of a young child's life, and it's the most dynamic period of neuroplasticity. So if we look at neuroplasticity, this is so important between 0 and 5. Of course, we know it does not stop at 5. Children or adults have a stroke at the age of 57 are able to learn skills again. People were in a motor vehicle accident at the age of 21 are able to relearn skills. It's just that between 0 and 5, we have this amazing period where so many things happen all at once. So when we look at the first yellow circle on top, the brain adaptability, at this age, the pruning and unused synapses take place. So we form new pathways in the brain that build those skills, and we keep on practicing. They are practicing ba, 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 ba. Then it becomes baba. Then it becomes baby. So it's just amazing to see how those new brain waves set and form. they prune away things that they don't use. That's why it's so important to use skills. If children don't use words, if they're not motivated, they will lose the word. Although regression, I'll just make a note about that. Regression, I'll speak about when I'm finished with this topic. Memory formation are very good between 0 to 5. So we can look at short-term memory, long-term memory, and working memory. I think most of us know the short-term memory, what that is, and what is long-term memory, but that working memory is so important in the classroom. So it's the ability to take the information you have and use it to make a plan, to understand, to reason, and to problem solve. So we often see children with learning difficulties have a problem with working memory. It's not necessarily that they can't remember something. They just don't know what to do with it once they remember it. In the green, experience-driven changes. So they experience changes. There's so much therapeutic potential. And as I said to you before, therapeutic potential doesn't stop at 5, not at all. But during the period 0 to 5, it's just so powerful. I've literally seen children at age 2 years start with therapy, and at the same time, a child at the age of 2 years, 8 months start with therapy. They're more or less on the same level. And the amount of growth you see in the 2-year-old, if compared with an 8-month-older child, is just phenomenal. And I've seen it many times. So it really does make a difference. They still have a lot of developmental flexibility. So what we often see is speech production errors, like I can't say the k, I use a t. If that's left too long, we really struggle to break the pattern, because now they've learned a cat is a tat. So they learn to say the k, but they will keep on using tat. If I teach them a new word, core, with a k, they'll immediately learn it that way. But the ones they stuck in will sometimes take longer. And that's why we also don't want to leave it too long. Because if you leave it too long, it takes longer and it's so much harder to change it. Environmental influence is a very powerful topic that we can speak a lot about. I think it comes back to where we put our child, why schools are so important, why teachers, educators, why all those people are just such a prominent part of our society, because we are the ones having an influence on this child's life. The learning environment, creating it so that he can be able to learn from it. Don't tell me what to do, show me what to do. Because that's what we do. We don't show children always what we want them to do, we just tell them. And then the 2 that's left, injury recovery. So if anything happened, there is an incident, middle ear pathology, there's time for this child to recover properly and get their hearing to a tent where they can listen and develop listening skills. And then there's a lot of learning changes taking place. So that's neuroplasticity. And the timing is just crucial. It comes back to everything I've said up to now, that if we leave it too long, we lose out on opportunity. If we don't do anything about it at all, a child might be stuck at the age of 8, really struggling with academic language because his underlying language principles that should have been built in the first 5 years weren't built properly. So he did not develop the ability to use abstract language, and now we're struggling with learning. So timing is so important. And then our most important, I use the word important too many times, but our thing that we want to do at this age is to promote a child's well-being and minimize developmental delays by promoting adaptive parenting and overall family functioning. So this is the stage where we really want to tell a parent, do this differently or don't do it differently. Sometimes they do it right, but do more of it. We want to make sure the school placement that we have is ideal. We want to make sure that whatever we are able to change in the child's environment, we do, so that this child can go ahead and function as a fully potentialized academic student, so that they can learn. Because if speech, language, listening, any of those are affected, it will have an impact later. And we can't deny it by not treating it or not handling or not referring. We need to make sure we are helping parents and ourselves and as therapists to get this child in the best possible place. The research has shown that they did over 20 years of studies. So children whose language were behind it too, late talkers, Some of them were still behind their peers at the age of 18 years of age in terms of language tasks. So this tells us why it's so important to treat it on time. Of course, like I said, milestones are not predictive. So we cannot say all children who didn't talk at 2 will have problems at 18. But 30% of them do not outgrow their difficulties. And if we don't attend to it, it's going to become a problem. And we're going to end up with the adults struggling to adjust in a working place. Because sometimes in school, it's still very supportive. You still have people know what you need, what you want. But in a workplace, there's not always that ability to say to your boss, I'm not going to do this because I'm struggling with listening. Kind of, it's not your boss's problem. It's something you need to deal with. And if we don't equip the children with the skills in school and in the classroom, they are going to struggle as an adult and as a young teen to do well. That was just that one. Okay, so now I've spoken all about what you should be expecting, what you can expect of a child at that age, and why we want the intervention. The question remains, when do I raise concerns? And even for me as a speech therapist, it's hard to tell a mom that I'm worried, I'm concerned about this. And I think as a teacher, you have to build a relationship with the parent and keep that relationship going for a year. So you don't want to alienate parents from your classroom or from you, because you need their buy-in to get this child where it should be. So I believe you raise concerns when you see some things and is able to describe behavior that are not like typically developing peers. So that can refer to anything. It can refer to their language. It can refer to their speech. It can refer to their gross motor skills. They can't skip. They can't jump. They don't climb on the jungle gym. It relates to the listening, to their visual skills, to planning, executive functioning. And I think 0 to 5 years is such a precious age to work with children, because you see so much, but you also have that ability to spot things that are out of place, things that are not in sync. This little boy is not as easily focused when you tell a story. This little one cannot get to the word. So when you are concerned, you need to raise that issue with parents, chat to your teacher aide in class, discuss it with parents and say, I'm a bit concerned, and make that recommendation based on what you're seeing in the child, without breaking down a child or breaking down his abilities, by just saying, I see that he's different in this aspect. And being different is not a problem. The problem is our system do not always accommodate different abilities. Our system are very much written for children who are developing in a specific way. And when your child is different to that, he will struggle in school. He may have difficulties, and we want to prevent it. So the how do I raise concerns? Use your knowledge on milestones, all those hundreds of things that I've now mentioned, to start a conversation. To say, today I asked him to do this, but she was unable to know what the difference between on and under is. Today I wanted to listen to your boy's story that he was telling me, but I could not understand his pronunciation of words. So start the conversation, and not as much I'm summoning you to share this information. Just, can we talk about this? What is your experience at home? What do you see? So describe the behavior you're seeing, and don't necessarily break down what it's not doing. Just tell them what you are seeing. So refer to trusted professionals like a speech therapist, an occupational therapist, mental health practitioner, or a medical specialist who can advise. So, and be kind. Remember, this is somebody's child. I always say, I wish parents could understand that as a teacher, I worked for 2 years as a special education teacher. So I dealt a lot with parents in that time. As a teacher, you don't want to see something wrong with the child. But if you see something wrong, it's your responsibility to do something about it. And I think sometimes parents come from the point that we just want to criticize, and that's not the thing. The thing is to prioritize this child's well-being within the system he's at, or within the home he's in, within the languages he's learning. So that is really crucial to take into consideration that it's hard for a parent to also hear that. And the first time you say it, they may not hear it. I have had many circumstances where I've explained to a parent certain behavior that I'm seeing in a child as a speech therapist. And I've explained the same situation over and over again. And about 6 months into the therapy process, they will be like, you know what I saw today? And then they will mention what I've been telling them for 6 months. Because now they are ready to receive the news. It didn't mean that what I said went down the drain. It was just at that stage the parents weren't ready to hear this. So if this means that you are on a regular basis pointing out that the child is struggling with this, the child is still having difficulties with this, you can see that this child is doing well in this area, but this is really hard for him. That are the things that you want to go from that point of view. You want to convey that information. So, but it's a difficult thing to do. I've done this over 25 years, and up to this day, when I get a child that comes into my session and I'm really alarmed about certain things and I want to refer them to another therapist even, or a medical professional like a neurologist or pediatrician, it's really hard for me to tell that to parents, because we all have that expectation of the perfect baby. Years ago, when I studied, the professor who did the early intervention training said to us in America at that stage, they had, in South Africa, it's purity, but here in the UAE, we also have Gerber. So he said everybody wants a Gerber baby. When parents fall pregnant, they have a family, they expect to have a Gerber baby because that's the baby they're seeing in the pictures. And these days, we're seeing them all over social media, the normal ones that doesn't have any problems. And in the end, we are breaking down that image that parents have of the Gerber baby when we're saying he's having difficulties. And it could be a slight difficulty, like saying there is, but it could also be a big thing, like autism, a learning difficulty, a sensory regulation problem. There could be bigger things at stake. And I think if we can just be kind in what we say and try to convince parents that this is not about breaking down a child, but describing what a child is doing and why we think he or she needs therapy. So the referral process, refer to trusted professionals. Trust a service provider enough to be able to recommend them to parents. There are so many professionals out there, and not everybody always has the best interest of the child at heart. I will say to parents, I can honestly tell you, I've never in my life given therapy to a child if I didn't think they're not in need of it. But unfortunately, it doesn't always work like that. There are therapists who may just take the opportunity and give therapy regardless. So make sure you have a team that you're in contact with, that you can communicate with, bounce off, to help. So the speech therapist, I've mentioned this now a few times, but speech therapists work on speech, language, and listening. So those are the three areas. Of course, stuttering counts as part of speech, difficulties with word finding counts as part of language, and then the auditory processing, following instructions, is the listening. So anything related to that, you will refer to your speech therapist. Occupational therapists look at different things. So they more look at fine motor skills, sensory processing, daily living activities, and executive planning. So those are your little ones that are disorganized, that struggles to deal with loud noises, have difficulty seeing what you're showing them, reversals of letters. So that's very much your occupational therapist. Physiotherapist work on motor movement, all of those things. They work on anything movement related, gross motor skills. Most centers here in Dubai has a pediatric physiotherapist as well. In South Africa, it's not that common, but I haven't gone to a center here who does not have a physiotherapist that can help with the gross motor delay. Then our mental health practitioners. I can't emphasize enough how important a mental health professional is in a child's life that's really having emotional or behavioral difficulties, or some trauma that's affecting his daily living situations. I feel it's something that is a bit underrated. I've cooperated with many mental health professionals like play therapists, psychologists, who's really together with my work or together with an occupational therapist job, have changed children's ability to adjust and adapt and continue with life. It just goes hand in hand. I think many parents are it's not a mental health problem. We're not saying it's a mental health problem. We're saying this child is struggling to adjust. This child is having difficulties. It's harder for him than for other children. So we need to be sure that if a child needs a mental health practitioner, that we have the guts and the kindness to tell that to parents. I've had children in my life refer to me as a speech therapist because the parent didn't feel comfortable going to a mental health professional. But as teachers and as schools and as centers, we need to make parents aware that this is something that we need to look at. We cannot just put it under the mat and pretend this is a speech problem. If it's really this child is struggling with adjusting to a new school or a new country, or changes in the family happening, somebody passing away, a teacher, a very loved teacher suddenly moving to another class. This could have a really big effect on children. And we need to acknowledge it. And if we don't acknowledge it, parents will never acknowledge it. If we don't start this conversation at some point, it's never going to be a priority in parents' lives. And then, of course, you get your medical specialists like neurologists, pediatricians. Those are mostly for your medical diagnosis. So that includes anything from autism, ADHD, cerebral palsy, syndromes. There's a lot of genetic syndromes that occur with autism. So that is what your medical specialist will be for. And if any medical treatment is needed, say, for instance, medication or referrals to other health professionals is necessary, this will be done. The one I didn't include, which I spoke about earlier, was for the hearing loss. For a hearing loss or for a hearing test, you refer to an audiologist. That's somebody that you also need to consider. I usually advise parents to have, when birth screening was done for hearing, I advise at the age of 2, 4, and 6, because anything can happen. A high fever can cause a hearing loss. A very big trauma can cause a hearing loss. If the child has problems with the middle ear infections, that can cause a temporary hearing loss. So those are the people you will consult when you need to refer. So that's where you send your families. The big thing in the UAE, which I mentioned at the beginning, multilingualism in the UAE. So I'd love to read that quote there. Language is the roadmap of a culture. It tells you where its people come from and where they are going. And I think we need to pay more attention to this. In South Africa, we have 11 languages as well. So parents will be told that if you send your child to an English school, you must speak English to your child, which I get, because then the child gets the English exposure. But your language is so important to your family and your culture. And by telling a parent to speak only English with their child, we're taking away an important part of their bonding with their child. Because if I, as a parent, do not feel comfortable expressing myself in this language, how will I attach with my child and interact and feel comfortable? So in the UAE, it's quite common. I think 81% are expats. So there's a lot of languages going around. There's also a lot of schools, different schools. Arabic is, of course, the language of instruction in the public schools, and something that is required to have exposure to in even the private schools. So we need to consider some things when just talking about language. So the myth that I want to debunk here about multilingualism is that exposing a child to more than one language does not create a speech problem or a language problem. If a child has language difficulties, they will have it across more than one language. So by exposing a child to a second language, you cannot impose a language problem. It could make the problem the child has a bit more difficult, but by exposing it into a second or a third language, you're not creating a communication disorder. For years, it was believed that up to 3 years, you're only exposed to one language, and then you're exposed to another language after that. But over the years, it's really been exposed by literature that children can learn more than one language. Some children are predisposed to language difficulties. For some of us, it's easier to learn a language than for others. Some people can do it, others can't as easily. So, but by teaching your child the home language and English, you're not creating the problem. Sometimes it's pointing it out more clearly because you see that they're really struggling. They're just not picking up the words and they're struggling with academic language. But we should not be saying to parents that this is your fault because you did not expose your child to enough English or you did not expose your child to this. Children have language difficulties regardless of one language or two languages. I myself, in my master's research, looked at the exposure to more than one language, and I found that the children who were struggling with language were exposed to more than one language, but it was a very small study, so there's no way to indicate to a parent that this is because you've got more than one language, and we need to take into account that this is a family's culture and their heritage, and family are speaking this language, and we can't take this away from a child. So, basic guidelines for language learning. The first one is to start early. The indication is that you should start as early as possible. Expose children to more than one language. Especially if he's going to go to English schooling and to speaking a different language at home, to make sure that you start early and to be supportive. I can honestly say learning a new language is difficult for me. I've really tried since coming here to learn some Arabic, and it's been hard. I was warned before that it's a difficult language, but I can honestly tell you it's not easy. And what makes the difference for me to be willing to learn is people being supportive. So be supportive. If a little boy or a little girl comes into your classroom or into your school and he's not speaking a good amount of English, just be supportive. By just being kind and supportive, you are already creating a good learning opportunity for this child to be willing to express and try. And the only way we learn language is by using it. That's why we lose a language when we leave a country where there's only that language is spoken. You lose it because you don't use it. It comes back to the synapses in the brain that's being pruned away because you're not using the word. So value practice over perfection. So rather than getting it perfect, give the child the opportunity to practice this, to say it over and over again, to create an opportunity where he needs to ask it again and again and again, because by repetitive use of that actions, they will learn and use it. And don't worry so much about errors. And I think we as adults make that same mistake. You don't feel self-confident in a language, so you'd rather not speak it instead of just trying and not worrying about the errors. Because if you're in a supportive conversation, people will be willing to help you and teach you the principles that you need. So if a child says goat, we don't say, no, it wasn't goat, it was wait. We will say, yes, he went to school. So that's the same thing you're doing, but you're just doing it in a different manner. The benefits of learning more than one language are so obvious, but I will mention it. So language learning is much easier if you have more than one language. Apparently, it is much easier to learn the second, the third, and the fourth language. That's why so many people who have two languages will often have more than two, because it creates different ways of learning, and every language is different and unique in its own way. It gives you the ability to listen and connect to others. If you can speak a language, you are able to understand a lot about a child or a person, understand their perspective, if you understand where they're coming from. It adds value in a modern and diverse workforce. It creates that opportunity to communicate with people which you otherwise would not be able to communicate with. And apparently people who learn languages from a young age are better at problem solving. I'm not quite sure why that is, but it's mentioned in several studies that problem solving are much easier when you've been exposed to more than one language or when you are multilingual. So there are three ways that people like to teach language to children, or how we learn. So the first one is by setting. So you will speak a language according to the setting. So at home, Arabic will be spoken at home, but at school, English will be spoken. So it's you literally create a setting. When we're at grandma and grandpa's house, we will speak this language. When we at our house, we will speak this language. So it's literally by the setting. This is quite a common way to do things in UAE. A lot of children will have Arabic at home, and there may be an English nanny, and then the school is English. And so at school, you create that opportunity to learn English. We can also do by topic. So if you talk about family, you talk in Arabic. If you talk about school, we speak in English. If we talk about the homework-based activity, we speak in English. If we talk about visiting the family, we speak in Arabic or Urdu, or whatever the language may be. And then it is in relation to the speaker or the person you're talking to. So is it my teacher? Is it my mom? Is it my nanny? Is it another family member? So those are the three ways you can constructively build towards learning a language. If you want to do it in a specific way, you can do it by the setting, you can do it by the topic, or you can do it by the speaker. This is a good way for children to learn that, oh, she speaks English, she speaks Arabic. Also, they will mix the languages, especially when they start learning language. They will mix it, but usually children are able to quite quickly learn that, oh, my teacher speaks English, my grandpa speaks Urdu. My nanny speaks English, my mommy speaks Arabic. So this is a structured way to teach language. We have many resources to our exposure to help children learn language. The thing I like most of all of them is about the tools are books. I love books. I love using books. Pictures are very powerful in helping children learn. Pictures with both the Arabic word and the English word, or only the English word with the Arabic word, whatever. Books are really helpful. These days, we differentiate between screen device books and physical books. Personally, I like a physical book because it takes our children off the screens. It's something they're already exposed to a lot, and we don't want to just teach them that there's no other way to interact. I think it's important for our children also to see that we read books. And if you're on a device, to show them, mommy is reading a book or teacher is reading a book. But I like a physical book. It's easy. A child can recognize a chair, and if he only knows the word for chair in his own language, and you tell him chair, he knows what you're talking about, because pictures, in a sense, is also a language. So it helps you a lot to have books. Music is very powerful. Songs, we use songs, rhymes to teach concepts, to teach the rhythm of language, because language has a rhythm and it's sometimes hard to learn. So it's enjoyable. Children will learn from it because it's fun. Often when you combine movements with the words, it's even more interactive and children get to take part. TV and video. Yes, there's a lot going on about screen time devices. I don't think we need to get into the worries about screen time devices and why not. But it is a way to help children learn. There's a lot of repetition and a lot of content. So if it's somebody getting into the bus and all 5 characters are getting into the bus and they're talking and it's interacting with the way it sounds. So even myself, when I just arrived, it was for me easier to watch an Arabic movie with subtitles, to follow it than just listening, because it takes a lot to listen to the sounds of a language and to be able to identify it. So subtitles works very well, especially when we're working towards literacy. And then we get official language learning programs. You get apps, you get extra classes, something like an extracurricular activity like music in itself can be a learning opportunity for language. So those are the ways we can, those are the tools we have to our ability to have available to use to teach language to children and to expose them to more than one language. I think a classroom is a very powerful place to use all of these instruments, books, music, screen time devices, learning programs, to help children learn about language and to be supportive and embrace that we are from different cultures, we are from different languages, but we can still develop a system where we can communicate and we can engage. So that was my 10 cents on multilingualism. As you know, I'm from Hope Ability Medical Center. We are based in Ushikwe, Dubai. I'm a speech therapist here, focusing on young children and school-age children. If you are in need of any advice or any information, you can use my email address. Our Instagram handle is there, Hope AMC, and Elmien Speech is my own personal handle that you can use. I really hope that what I've said to you has made some sense, and that if you take away from today only one thing that you can use with children, that you can go back into your classroom and this equip you to help children better. I'm glad to answer any questions. If you want to pop something in the chat, maybe a final thought on anything I haven't mentioned. Oh, I did forget to mention this. I wrote it down on my notes. So about regression. There is something that children start developing skills, and at a certain age, around 2, they will start losing words, they will lose skills. So when you see a regression, and it's not related to anything in the family or a new baby brother or sister born or maybe a change in the classroom, it's important to refer. We can quickly take a baseline and see where was this child, where was he going, and why did he regress? And do we need medical intervention or speech therapy intervention? Rebecca, thank you for your comment. I am so glad that this helped you. I'm not that good with online presenting. I love the energy from an audience, so it's really hard for me to just speak to the screen. But it was lovely to just speak to you all and really pop an email into my inbox if there's anything I can help with or assist. Good luck with the school term starting for all of you. May it be a blessed year for you and the little ones in your class, and may this help you shape our children for the future. We have finished a few minutes earlier, so I'll stay online for a few more minutes if there's anything in the chat, but then I am khalas for today.